There's a chapter in Think and Grow Rich that most people have never read, not because they skipped it, not because it wasn't important, but because it was literally sealed away, considered too controversial, too dangerous, too explicit for the general public in 1937. Napoleon Hill called it The Mystery of Sex Transmutation, and after interviewing over 500 of the most successful people in history, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, he declared that this one principle was the difference between those who achieve extraordinary success and those who spend their entire lives struggling. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You're probably doing the exact opposite of what these masters understood. Every single day, you're draining the very force that could transform your entire reality. And nobody's telling you because in our culture, this topic is either completely taboo or completely misunderstood. But what if the reason your manifestations aren't working has nothing to do with your vision board, your affirmations, or your belief? What if it's because you're energetically bankrupt? Stay with this, because what's about to be revealed will completely change how you think about desire, energy, and creation itself. When Napoleon Hill sat down to write Think and Grow Rich, he had already spent 20 years studying success. Andrew Carnegie had commissioned him to discover the formula, the actual principles that separated the wealthy from the struggling, the influential from the invisible, the creators from the dreamers. And what he discovered shocked him. Every single person who had achieved massive success without exception had learned to harness what Hill called the most powerful of human desires. Not the desire for money, not the desire for fame or recognition, the sexual desire, the creative life force itself. But here's where it gets interesting. They weren't using this energy for its obvious biological purpose. They had learned something that sounds almost mystical. They had learned to transmute it, to transform it, to redirect this raw primal force into creative genius, unstoppable persistence, and magnetic personal power. Hill wrote that sexual energy is the life force which runs the machinery of life. He discovered that the most creative periods in any genius's life corresponded directly with periods of heightened sexual energy that was being consciously redirected rather than randomly dissipated. Think about that. The greatest inventions, the most successful business empires, the most profound works of art, they weren't created in spite of sexual energy. They were created because of it. Because someone understood how to take the most powerful force in human biology and channel it into creation rather than constant release. This wasn't moral judgment. This was energy mechanics. Hill found that the highly sexed individual, the person with strong life force, had the potential for genius, but only if they learned transmutation. Otherwise, that same powerful energy would be their downfall, scattered into 1,000 momentary pleasures while their potential remained dormant. Let's talk about what's actually happening in the body and brain, because this isn't just philosophy, this is biology. Sexual energy is the creative force. It's the energy that literally creates new life. And that same energy, that same biological drive, carries with it a neurochemical cocktail more powerful than any drug. Dopamine, oxytocin, testosterone, adrenaline, endorphins. When someone experiences sexual arousal or desire, their entire nervous system activates, focus sharpens, creativity increases, problem-solving abilities enhance, energy levels spike. There's a reason why people in the early stages of attraction seem to have superhuman energy. They're operating on full life force. But here's what's happened in modern culture. We've been conditioned to immediately discharge this energy the moment it builds. Feel desire? Satisfy it instantly. Feel tension? Release it immediately. We've become like engines that spark and immediately shut off, never building enough momentum to actually go anywhere. The average person experiences sexual stimulation dozens of times per day through media, advertising, casual scrolling. Each time, there's a small energetic charge. And each time, That charge either dissipates into fantasy, distraction, or immediate gratification. The result? Constant low-level stimulation with constant low-level discharge. No build-up, no transmutation, no creative redirection. It's like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain wide open. Water's coming in, but it's going right back out. You never accumulate enough to actually use. Napoleon Hill observed that the most successful people had learned, whether consciously or unconsciously, to plug that drain, to contain that energy, to let it build until it became an unstoppable force that powered their creative work, their business decisions, their ability to persist when others quit. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. We're living in the most sexually stimulated and simultaneously the most sexually dissatisfied culture in human history. Unlimited access to stimulation. Algorithms designed to trigger desire. Dating apps that gamify romantic connection. Content specifically engineered to capture attention through sexual suggestion. And the result? A population that's constantly stimulated but never satisfied. Constantly aroused but never energized. Constantly seeking but never creating. This isn't moralizing. This is observation. Look at the data. Rates of depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, inability to focus all skyrocketing. And simultaneously, screen time up, instant gratification normalized, attention spans collapsing. The connection isn't coincidental. When sexual energy is constantly triggered and immediately released, several things happen. First, the dopamine system gets dysregulated. The brain starts needing more and more stimulation to feel the same reward. What used to satisfy no longer does. So the seeking continues, but the fulfillment never comes. Second, willpower and discipline erode. Every time there's an urge and an immediate satisfaction, the neural pathway of instant gratification gets stronger. The ability to delay gratification, which is essential for any long-term goal, weakens. Third, creative life force depletes. That energy that could power a business, a creative project, a physical transformation, it drains away in moments of passive consumption and quick release. And here's the part that nobody talks about. This is affecting manifestation directly. People wonder why their visualizations don't work, why their affirmations feel empty, why they set intentions, but nothing changes. And the answer might be uncomfortable. They're trying to manifest from a depleted energetic state. Manifestation isn't just mental. It's not just about thoughts or beliefs. It's about energy. Specifically, it's about having enough concentrated life force to actually generate the magnetic field that attracts opportunities, synchronicities, and results. When someone is constantly draining their creative life force, they're not magnetic. They're not emanating the frequency that draws their desires toward them. They're in a constant state of seeking and depleting rather than generating and attracting. So what is transmutation, actually? The word literally means to change from one form into another. In alchemy, it was about turning lead into gold. In the context of human energy, it's about taking sexual energy raw, biological, creative life force, and transforming it into a different expression. Not suppressing it, not denying it, not shaming it, transforming it. Think of it like water. Water can exist as ice, liquid, or steam. Same H2O molecules, completely different expressions depending on the energy state. Sexual energy is the same. It can express as biological reproduction, its obvious purpose, physical vitality and health, emotional intensity and passion, mental creativity and genius, spiritual connection and transcendence. Most people only know the first expression. They experience sexual energy, and it automatically channels into sexual activity or fantasy. But the masters Hill interviewed had discovered that the same energy could be consciously directed into the other expressions. Edison would go into his laboratory in a state of heightened energy and wouldn't emerge for days, inventing at a pace that seemed superhuman. Carnegie would describe periods of intense focus where business solutions would appear in his mind fully formed. Artists throughout history have documented their greatest creative flows occurring during periods of contained sexual energy. This wasn't coincidence. This was conscious transmutation. The mechanism works like this. Sexual energy creates a heightened state of nervous system activation. In that state, the brain becomes more creative, more focused, more capable of making novel connections. If that energy is immediately released sexually, the activation drops and returns to baseline. But if that energy is contained and then redirected toward creative work, the heightened state is maintained and channeled. This wasn't coincidence. This was conscious transmutation. The mechanism works like this. Sexual energy creates a heightened state of nervous system activation. In that state, the brain becomes more creative, more focused, more capable of making novel connections. If that energy is immediately released sexually, the activation drops and returns to baseline. But if that energy is contained and then redirected toward creative work, the heightened state is maintained and channeled. The person literally works in an elevated state. Ideas flow more easily. Persistence comes naturally. Obstacles that would normally feel overwhelming seem manageable. Why? Because they're operating with full life force instead of at a fraction of their capacity. Here's where this directly connects to manifestation and why understanding this principle changes everything. Most manifestation teaching focuses on the mental. Visualize what you want. Believe it's possible. Align your thoughts. Repeat affirmations. And while these aren't wrong, they're incomplete. They're trying to create change at the mental level while ignoring the energetic foundation. Think of it like this. Thoughts are the architect's blueprint, but energy is the actual construction material. You can have the most detailed, beautiful blueprint in the world, but if you have no materials, nothing gets built. Sexual energy creative life force is the primary construction material for manifestation. It's the raw power that takes mental intention and makes it physical reality. When this energy is strong and directed, several things happen simultaneously. Magnetism increases. People who are operating on full life force have presence. They walk into rooms and are noticed. They speak and people listen. Opportunities seem to find them. This isn't magic, it's energetics. They're emanating a stronger field, and that field attracts. Intuition sharpens. Napoleon Hill talked about infinite intelligence, the ability to receive insights and guidance that seem to come from beyond the conscious mind. When life force is strong, the connection to intuition becomes clearer. The right ideas appear at the right time. Decisions feel certain rather than confused. Synchronicities multiply. This is the phenomenon everyone talks about, but few can explain. When someone is operating at high energy, meaningful coincidences increase. The right person appears. The perfect opportunity opens. Resources show up exactly when needed. This happens because the person's energetic frequency is matching the frequency of their desires. Action becomes natural. This is crucial. Most people struggle with manifestation because they visualize but don't act, or they try to force action through willpower. But when life force is high and directed, action feels natural. There's energy available to actually do the work. Persistence doesn't require discipline. It flows from the abundance of available energy. Results compound. Small successes build momentum. That momentum creates more energy. More energy creates more action. More action creates more results. The upward spiral begins. And it all starts with understanding how to work with creative life force rather than constantly depleting it. Understanding the principle is one thing. Actually applying it is another. So let's get specific about how this works in practice. The framework has three essential components: contain, activate, redirect. Contain. This is about creating conscious relationship with sexual energy instead of unconscious reaction. Most people operate on autopilot. Stimulus, arousal, immediate satisfaction. Over and over, dozens of times per week or even per day. Containment means introducing space between the stimulus and the response. It means recognizing when sexual energy is rising and making a conscious choice about what to do with it, rather than defaulting to immediate release. This isn't about permanent celibacy or suppression. It's about building capacity to hold energy, like a battery that's been upgraded to store more charge. Practically, this might mean periods of deliberate restraint, days, weeks, depending on the individual, reducing or eliminating artificial stimulation, porn, excessive sexual content in media, becoming aware of when sex or masturbation is being used as escape from discomfort rather than genuine desire, creating containers where energy can build rather than constantly leak. The goal isn't to never express sexually. The goal is to move from unconscious, compulsive release to conscious, intentional expression. Activate. Once energy is being contained rather than immediately discharged, the next step is learning to consciously activate and increase it. This is counterintuitive to many. Isn't the point to reduce sexual energy? No. The point is to increase it and learn to direct it. Practices that activate life force. Intense physical exercise, resistance training, sprinting, martial arts. Breath work that builds energy in the body, certain pranayama techniques. Cold exposure, cold showers, ice baths. Fasting, controlled periods that increase alertness and energy. Creative visualization, while in a heightened state. Physical practices like yoga or qigong that move energy. The key insight: sexual energy and life force energy are the same thing. By activating one, you activate the other. The person who learns to consciously generate high life force has more available for transmutation. Redirect. This is where transmutation actually happens. When energy is built and activated, it must be given direction. Otherwise, it just builds as tension and frustration. The moment of redirection is crucial. When sexual energy is high, when there's that feeling of restlessness, intensity, aliveness, instead of discharging it sexually, immediately channel it into creative action. This might look like sitting down to work on the primary creative project or business, intense physical training, writing, painting, composing any creative expression, strategic planning and decision-making, learning a complex skill, having important conversations that require full presence. The experience is distinctive. Work doesn't feel like work. There's a flow state. Hours pass without noticing. Ideas come rapidly. The quality of output is noticeably higher. This is transmutation in action. The same energy that would have been released sexually is instead being released creatively. And the satisfaction is similar. There's a sense of fulfillment, of energy well used, of completion. An important question arises. What about people in relationships? Does transmutation mean celibacy? Napoleon Hill was explicit about this. No. In fact, he found that the most powerful transmutation often occurred in the context of loving relationships. But, and this is critical, it required conscious partnership. The key distinction is this. Is sex being used as constant escape from tension or as conscious expression of love and creative energy? Many relationships fall into a pattern where sex becomes a release valve. Uncomfortable feelings arise, tension builds, sex provides relief, tension builds again, repeat. This pattern keeps both people energetically depleted and prevents the kind of creative collaboration that partnerships can generate. But when both people understand transmutation, something different becomes possible. Periods of containment create more charge between partners. That charge, when consciously held, increases attraction, deepens intimacy, and builds collaborative creative energy. When the partners do come together sexually, it's from overflow rather than depletion. It's conscious choice rather than unconscious habit. Hill called this the mastermind principle in romantic relationships. When two people align their combined sexual and creative energy toward a shared vision, a business, a mission, a creative work, they become exponentially more powerful than either would be alone. The combined life force of two people, both practicing transmutation, creates a field of energy that can accomplish extraordinary things. This is why many of the most successful entrepreneurs, artists, and leaders either had partners who understood this principle or consciously chose periods of solitude to build their creative work. The relationship itself becomes a container for increased energy rather than a drain. Both people inspire each other to greater heights rather than pulling each other into comfort and mediocrity. Let's address the obstacles that come up when attempting to practice transmutation, because they're predictable and they're significant. Obstacle 1. Physical discomfort and restlessness. When someone begins containing sexual energy after years of immediate release, the body responds with discomfort, restlessness, irritability, tension. This is withdrawal from the dopamine pattern that's been established. The solution isn't to push through with willpower alone. It's to redirect that restless energy immediately into physical activity. The discomfort is actually energy seeking an outlet. Give it one, just not the habitual sexual one. Train, run, create, build. The discomfort transforms into momentum. Obstacle 2. Mental obsession. When sex or sexual fantasy has been a primary mental escape, removing that escape reveals what was being avoided. Boredom, anxiety, difficult emotions, uncomfortable truths. The mind will obsess about sex as a way to avoid feeling what needs to be felt. The solution is to allow the feelings. Sit with the discomfort. Journal through the anxiety. Feel the boredom fully. Paradoxically, the obsession decreases when the underlying discomfort is acknowledged rather than escaped. Obstacle 3. Social conditioning. We live in a culture that pathologizes sexual restraint. Sexual health has been defined as frequent release. The idea of containment gets labeled as repression, as unhealthy, even as dangerous. The solution is to reframe the practice. This isn't repression, it's energy management. Elite athletes manage their energy carefully before competition. Musicians manage their energy before performances. Why would anyone expect to manifest their dreams while being energetically careless? Obstacle 4. Relationship friction. If one partner understands transmutation and the other doesn't, conflict arises. One person wants to build energy for creative purposes. The other experiences that as rejection. The solution is communication and education. Share the principle. Invite exploration together. Make it collaborative rather than one person imposing restriction on the other. Often, when the non-practicing partner sees the results, increased energy, better mood, creative output, magnetic presence, they become curious to try it themselves. Obstacle 5. The failure cycle. Someone commits to transmutation, experiences great results for a few days or weeks, then breaks the practice. Shame and guilt follow. They abandon the practice entirely, feeling like they failed. The solution is to reframe entirely. Transmutation isn't about perfection. It's about awareness and intention. Every moment of choosing to redirect energy is valuable, regardless of what happened yesterday. The practice's cumulative, even imperfect application yields results over time. Now let's go deeper into why this works from multiple perspectives: physical, psychological, and energetic. Physically, sexual energy is governed by the endocrine system, particularly testosterone, but also the entire hormonal cascade. When sexual release is frequent, the body maintains a certain hormonal baseline. When release is reduced and energy is redirected, the hormonal profile shifts. Testosterone increases in both men and women, though more dramatically in men. This correlates with increased confidence, assertiveness, muscle development, and mental clarity. Growth hormone production optimizes. The nervous system becomes more resilient to stress. Additionally, the neurotransmitter system rebalances. Dopamine sensitivity increases, meaning smaller things provide greater satisfaction. The constant need for stimulation decreases. Natural motivation returns. Psychologically, sexual transmutation develops the capacity for delayed gratification, the single strongest predictor of long-term success in virtually every domain. Every time energy is contained rather than immediately released, the neural pathways of self-regulation strengthen. This transfers to other areas: food, money, attention. The person who can contain and direct sexual energy finds it easier to contain and direct all other impulses. Discipline stops being willpower and starts being natural capacity. Additionally, self-image shifts. There's a sense of mastery over oneself rather than being controlled by impulses. This quiet confidence is magnetic and noticeable to others, even when the practice itself is never discussed. Energetically, this is where it gets into territory that science hasn't fully mapped, but practitioners have consistently reported across cultures and centuries. When sexual energy is contained, practitioners report feeling a rising of energy through the body. Ancient systems called this kundalini, or chi, rising through meridians. Modern practitioners describe it as energy moving from the base of the spine upward through the torso and into the head. As this energy rises, different effects manifest at different levels. At the gut level, increased physical vitality, better digestion, stronger immunity. At the heart level, greater emotional capacity, deeper compassion, stronger relationships. At the throat level, clearer communication, authentic self-expression, creative voice. At the head level, enhanced clarity, stronger intuition, access to insight beyond the logical mind. Whether this is literal energy or metaphorical doesn't matter pragmatically. The effects are consistent and observable. People who practice transmutation report all of these enhancements. From a manifestation perspective, this matters enormously. If manifestation is about matching the energetic frequency of what's desired, then rising into these higher expressions of energy naturally aligns with higher manifestations. Someone operating primarily from the base level, survival, security, immediate gratification, attracts base level results. Someone operating from heart or head level, creation, vision, intuition, attracts those corresponding results. Transmutation is literally about raising one's operating frequency. Napoleon Hill made a bold claim: sexual transmutation is the secret behind genius. Let's examine this claim because it sounds extreme, but the evidence is compelling. Hill observed that virtually every genius he studied had unusual sexual energy. Not unusual in the sense of perversion, but unusual in intensity. They were highly sexed individuals, meaning their life force was strong. And crucially, they learned to channel that intense energy into their work. Look at the patterns. Tesla, never married, famously celibate, produced an extraordinary volume of inventions in sustained creative bursts. Described entering states where inventions would appear fully formed in his mind. Edison, periods of intense work where he'd stay in his laboratory for days without emerging. His creative output during these periods far exceeded his output during normal times. Einstein described his greatest insights coming not through logical deduction, but through almost sensual connection with the universe. His creative periods correlated with intense energy that needed expression. Beethoven composed his greatest works during periods of unfulfilled romantic longing. The very energy of desire was transmuted directly into his compositions. Da Vinci, another who never married, channeled extraordinary energy into simultaneous pursuits: art, engineering, anatomy, invention. The breadth and depth of his genius seems superhuman, yet he was human, just human operating at full capacity, directed into creation rather than dissipated. And it's not just historical figures. Contemporary high achievers often describe similar practices without necessarily calling it transmutation. Athletes who abstain before competition. Entrepreneurs who notice their best strategic thinking happens after periods of restraint. Artists who consciously work with the tension of desire to fuel creative expression. Leaders who cultivate personal magnetism through energy management. The common thread: understanding that sexual energy isn't just about sex. It's about life force itself. And life force can create more than biological life. It can create works of genius. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. So here's a practical framework for anyone wanting to test this principle directly. The 30-Day Sexual Transmutation Challenge. Days 1 to 7. Observation. Don't try to change anything yet. Just observe. Notice when sexual energy arises. Notice what triggers it. Notice what happens to that energy. Does it get released? How? What were you doing before? What do you do after? Keep simple notes. Time, trigger, action taken, energy level after. The goal is pure awareness without judgment. Collecting data about your current patterns. Days 8 to 14. Containment. Begin introducing space between arousal and release. Not complete abstinence necessarily, but deliberate delay. If the pattern has been immediate satisfaction, practice waiting. An hour, a day, whatever creates some container. During that space, redirect attention immediately to something else. Physical activity, creative work, learning, productive tasks. Notice what happens to energy levels, mental clarity, motivation during this week. Days 15 to 21. Activation. Add practices that build life force. Morning cold shower, even 30 seconds. Afternoon intense physical training, minimum 30 minutes. Evening creative work on primary goal, minimum 1 hour. Continue the containment practice. The energy is building. Give it productive outlets continuously. Notice if ideas are coming more easily, if motivation is increasing, if presence is strengthening. Days 22 to 30. Full transmutation. This is integration week. When sexual energy rises, immediately channel it to creative work. The very moment of feeling that intensity, redirect it. Sit down and work. Train, create, build. Let the energy flow through into manifestation rather than dissipation. By day 30, assess what changed: energy levels, creative output, mental clarity, manifestation results, relationship quality, physical health, mood, presence. The answer to those questions will be far more convincing than any theory or explanation. There's a dimension to this that's bigger than individual achievement, and it's worth considering. Imagine a culture where people understood energy, where the most powerful creative force in human biology was treated with reverence rather than marketed for profit, where young people were taught to harness their life force for creation rather than being bombarded with stimulation designed to drain it. What could such a culture create? The collective creative output would be staggering. The solutions to problems that seem unsolvable might emerge easily when thousands of people are operating at high creative capacity instead of depleted. Art would flourish. Innovation would accelerate. Communities would strengthen because people would have energy available for connection rather than being constantly withdrawn into private consumption. This isn't utopian fantasy. This is just the natural result of people understanding and working with their energy rather than unconsciously squandering it. Napoleon Hill saw this possibility. That's likely why he was so insistent about including the transmutation chapter, despite knowing it would be controversial. He understood that if even a fraction of people learned this principle, society itself would transform. On an individual level, the question is simple. What could be created if everyone was operating at 100% capacity instead of 30%? What dreams would manifest if people stopped draining their creative life force and started directing it? The potential is genuinely unlimited. Because sexual energy creative life force is unlimited, it renews constantly. The question is never, do I have enough energy? The question is always, what am I doing with the energy I have? This brings us to the real moment, the choice point. Because everything shared here is meaningless if it stays as information rather than becoming practice. There are two paths. Path 1. Continue the current pattern. Immediate gratification when urges arise. Constant low-level stimulation. Energy dissipating rather than accumulating. Manifestation practices that feel empty because they're not backed by actual life force. Dreams that stay dreams because there's never enough energy to make them real. This path is comfortable. It's normal. It's what everyone else is doing. And it leads to a life of quiet unfulfillment, working hard, but never achieving what feels possible. Wanting deeply, but never manifesting fully. Dreaming big, but living small. Path 2. Start the practice. Begin treating sexual energy as the powerful creative force it actually is. Learn containment. Build activation practices. Master redirection. Experience what it feels like to operate on full life force instead of at a fraction of capacity. This path is uncomfortable initially. It goes against cultural conditioning. It requires consciousness where unconscious habits have ruled. But it leads to manifestation that actually works, not because of better visualization techniques, but because there's actual energy behind the intention. It leads to discovering what you're actually capable of when the creative genius that Napoleon Hill documented becomes your lived experience rather than just an interesting concept. The choice seems obvious when stated plainly, but the reality is that most people will choose Path 1, not because they don't understand Path 2, but because Path 1 is easier in the moment, even though it's harder in the long run. Path 2 requires something rare, the willingness to be uncomfortable now for the sake of extraordinary results later. The willingness to go against the cultural current. The willingness to treat oneself as powerful rather than powerless. Napoleon Hill discovered something that the most successful people in history understood intuitively. Creative genius isn't randomly distributed. It's not genetic luck. It's not reserved for the chosen few. It's the natural result of learning to harness the most powerful force in human biology, sexual energy. Creative life force, the very energy that creates life itself, and directing it consciously toward creation. This principle was hidden in a sealed chapter because society wasn't ready for it. The question is, are you ready for it? Are you ready to stop wondering why your manifestations don't work and start understanding the energetic foundation that makes manifestation possible? Are you ready to stop settling for a fraction of your capacity and start operating at the level of creative genius that's actually available? Are you ready to feel fully alive again, not through another hit of stimulation, but through the natural aliveness that comes from having strong life force that's being directed toward meaningful creation? The principle is simple. Contain the energy. Activate it. Redirect it. Let it build rather than leak. Channel it into creation rather than constant dissipation. The results are profound. Increased magnetism, sharper intuition, natural persistence, creative flow, opportunities appearing, synchronicities multiplying, manifestations actualizing. And it all starts with a single choice. What will you do with your energy? Will you continue giving it away unconsciously, moment by moment, until there's nothing left for your dreams? Or will you learn to harness it, direct it, transmute it into the reality you actually want to create? The hidden chapter has been revealed. The secret is no longer sealed. The only question remaining is, what will you do with it? Your creative genius is waiting. Your manifestations are possible. Your life force is abundant. The practice begins now. What will you create?